Hi everybody, thank you for joining me for the tutorial for this 49 and Market Spectrum Gardenia Mini, which I've called the Spectrum Gardenia Mini because that's how I roll. Anyway, this is going to be a really quick overview. If you want to look at the project in much more detail, then you can do so in a previous YouTube video that I've made, which is called the Spectrum Gardenia Minibook overview, I think. Anyway, I shall link it down below. So just to run through quickly before we get started with class, this book is very simple and very quick to put together. Where it kind of differs is that it looks much more intricate than it is because of the way I've decorated it, because there are so many amazing elements to the Spectrum Gardenia range that I've had a really hard time leaving any out. So I just used most of it actually because I loved it. I have only used the 6x8 papers though. I used the collection pad and I used the foundations pad, and then I just went mad on the ephemera. So I've used things like the laser cut leaves, the laser cut butterflies, the ephemera, chipboards, you name it, I've used it because it is lovely. Anyway, what I did do as well was I actually got my sewing machine out and I sewed a lot. And when I sew, I like to leave all of these little wispy bits. So I'm not going to go through in great detail how I decorated this book. This is about the structure. But if you have a look below, what I've done is I've linked in to a folder where you can see all of the photographs of my book. So if you do want to copy it exactly, then you can have a look at the photos and it'll show you exactly how I've put it together. There's also a cutting guide and then links to this video elsewhere as well. But everything that you need to put this book together will be linked below to a OneDrive link. So let me take you through the book itself. There's a little bit of crop going on here, so in the class I'm going to make this slightly wider so that doesn't happen, but the book itself is 4 pages long and the pages are actually all exactly the same. So the front part of the page has this flap and then behind it there is a very simple vertical pocket. On the back, what we've got is a flapped pocket with this insert pull out. Lots of room for photos. I mean, obviously I haven't left space for photos on mine because I just wanted to showcase the papers, but if you're going to make this with lots of photos, there's absolutely room for truckloads in here. But as I said, as you can see here, that each page is exactly the same. It just looks really different because of the way that I've decorated everything up, but it's going to be very quick and easy to put together. So I just wanted to quickly take you through so that you can see what I've done. And now it's going to be on to make it. And we're going to start with our covers, which is simply 2 pieces of grey board. And then I've just used some pattern paper here for the spine. And then actually the hinges, which we'll make in a moment as well, these are not attached to the spine. So watch with me, make with me, and let's make this somewhat unusual but very easy book together. Right. So I've got everything I need to put together my book. I've got 2 sheets of 1500 micron grey board. For those of you not in the UK, A4 here is 8¼ by 11 3/4 inches. The reason I've got 2 is because we need to cut 2 pieces at 6x8 from them. But obviously, if you've got, say, 1 piece of 12 by 12 chipboard, you can get both pieces out of that. I've got some A4 cardstock. I think probably American sized A4 will be just fine, or you can use 12 by 12. It's just plain cardstock that I'm going to make my pages out of. And then I have got some tape here, some construction tape, and that I'm going to use on my covers, but I'll come to that and I'll tell you an alternative for it because it's actually not structural, so it might make it a little bit easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by cutting our covers, and I'm just going to find a blunt-ish trimmer, and I'm going to cut 2 at 6 by 8 inches. Okay, unfortunately, thanks to British A4 sizes, I can't get both out of the same sheet here. We're just 1/4 of an inch off, unfortunately, which is why I reckon if you're going to use a 12 by 12 sheet of grey board, you're probably going to be better off. But do not throw your offcuts away, because I've certainly used bits of chipboard on the front of my book to raise up and layer some of the designs rather than use foam, which I personally hate. Mainly because I hate having sticky fingers. I hate getting glue on my fingers. I hate sticky foam on my fingers. I hate sticky foam on my scissors. Blech. Anyway, I digress. So here we go. So those are my 2 covers. These are 6 by 8 inches. And what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to cover mine around the edge with tape. Because if you see here, you can actually see the edge of my book. You've got that little bit of black reveal around the edge. Now, if you want to, you can cover it in the traditional way, where you just simply cover your grey board on all 4 sides with just plain cardstock. There's absolutely nothing stopping you doing that. But I'm just going to save some of my cardstock, and I'm just going to use some of my construction tape just to go round the edge. Let's cut that twice. Now this is a little bit different from maybe regular construction tape. This is one that I love that looks just like cardboard. It's not kind of like that crepey, washy type tape. It's called matte decoration tape. But any construction tape will do. But this one's got like a double backing on it. So I'm just going to go round the edge. Just cut that slightly too long. There we go. Snip into those corners. And I'm going to sneeze. Hang on. Phew, pardon me. I am so sorry. I don't know what's caused that. Okay. Same on this end. Let's just fold that down. Same on that side. And that side, I'll go over them again in a minute to tidy them up. But just for now, I'm going to put that down like that. Let's chop those 4 corners. Okay, it's a little bit squished there. I'm not too worried about that. Let me find my bone folder. Let's just make sure that that's nicely stuck down. There we go. So that's one done. And now I'm just going to do the other in exactly the same way. This is when it doesn't help not having decent nails. So same again, snip into those corners, fold that tape over, same on that side. Oop, didn't do that very well. Thankfully this is kind of forgiving. Okay, let's just go over this again. There we go, and those are my front and back cover, all nicely put together. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make the spine piece. Now on my original, what I actually did was I used 2 pieces of pattern paper. So let's pretend that this is pattern paper and we are going to cut, and I made this a lot thicker by sandwiching 2 pieces together. So I am going to cut 2 at 4 by 8 inches. Okay, so 2 at 4 by 8 inches. Okay, what I did then was I actually glued these back to back. So you can either use some double-sided tape or some glue. Just see what I've got here. Have I got some? Yeah, I've got some of my. Oh no, don't know what that is. Oh. Don't seem to have any of my super wide double-sided tape here, so I'll just use some thin stuff. My advice is, I'm just going to do this quickly, but this is not ideal, but my advice would be to keep these pieces of tape absolutely flush to one another and not leave the spaces. But I'm going to leave spaces just for quickness. Speed, that's the word, isn't it? Okay. Do the knife. Let's have a look and see what I've got. Let's take these off. As I said, I use pattern paper for this piece. The nice thing about the 49 and Market pattern paper is that actually it's not paper at all. It's a really decent thickness cardstock, so it's very solid and safe to use for all sorts of things. But it means that it does stand up well on its own when it comes to structure. So do, you know, consider the thickness of your paper that you're using for this. You could probably get away with just one if it's something like the thickness of 49 and Market, but I don't know. I wanted to use 2 just in case. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay this down on top like that. Okay, so that sits on top of that one. Ignore that little bit of tape that's coming out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my scoreboard and my scoring tool, and I'm going to score on the 4-inch side. So that means I've got my 4 inches here at the top. I'm going to score at 1 inch. And because this is a little bit thicker now, we've got 2 pieces on there, I can press a little bit harder. And then I'm going to score every 1/4 of an inch up until I get to 3 inches. So I'm scoring at 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 3/4, 2, 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4, and 3 inches. Okay, so what I've got now is my spine piece, which hopefully you can see has got these ridges in both sides. Now when I come to put this on my book, the bit with the mountain ridges, so that's the bit when we had it face down on our scoreboard, I call these the valley ridges. The mountain ridges, which are the poppy up bits, those are going to be on the outside of my book. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to ever so slightly miter from the edge up until each of those first score lines. Not a massive miter, just a fairly gentle one. Just like that. Okay, so it's just a little bit of a gentle miter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of tape on each side, and this is the mountain side, so that's the lumpy bumpy bit. And I'm going to grab my glue, which I'll absolutely guarantee is stuck up because it's been really hot here. So we'll see. And I'm going to put some glue on this wing here between the edge and that first score line there. Yeah, I just need to prod this a bit. Hang on. Okay, so I'm putting some wet glue on that wing there. And I'm going to pop this on top. So this is the first score line, the knobbly bit up. And I'm going to glue that to my cover like that. So I've got my knobbly line, the first one there, and I'm gluing that on there like that. And then I'm going to do exactly the same with the other side. Now this tape is just to hold it all together while the wet glue dries. So wet glue all up until that score line. Pardon me. I might as well use my lines on my mat here to help line up. Once again, up to that score line. Let's pop that down, make sure that's straight. Let's have a look. Yep. Maybe just a little bit further in. There we go. There we are. So that's how I put the covers together. And I'm going to put those to one side just until the glue dries. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is make the hinge unit, which is a little bit different from usual. So if you grab your trimmer and some plain cardstock, because that was all I used, we are now going to cut out our hinges, and we're going to cut one at 4 by 8 inches. Let's use one that's not battered. So we're going to cut one at, got 2 pieces there. 4 by 8 inches. Okay, that bit isn't scored on, so we're just going to put that to one side. We're going to cut one at 2 3/4 by 8 inches. So one at 2 3/4 by 8 inches, and then one at 2 1/4 by 8 inches. Okay. So if you grab your scoreboard, let's start with the one that's 2 3/4 by 4. And I'm going to start on the 2 3/4 inch side. So that's putting 2 3/4 at the top. And I'm going to score at 1/2 inch. Let's have a look. At 1/2 inch, at 1 inch, at 1 3/4 inches, and at 2 1/4 inches. Okay. And then on this smaller piece, which was 2 1/4 by 8, we're going to score on the 2 1/4 inch side at 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1 1/4, and 1 3/4 inch. Okay. So you've got 2 pieces that look like that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold on the inside 2 score lines like that on both pieces. So I'm folding it on the inside score lines, on the middle score lines, and I'm just going to burnish. Okay, make sure that's straight. Okay, so we're going to put some glue on that piece there, and that is going to fit exactly into the middle of that there, like that. So if we put some glue, oh, I'm doing this right-handed, which means it's as straight as a donkey's hind leg. And we're going to pop that right in the middle. So we've got 3 gussets essentially here that are 1/4 inch each. Let's just make sure that all lines up nicely. Seems to. Let's have a look. very niddly. Let's try again. I could measure it, probably would have been quicker. Oh, good grief. Let's try this again. Right, so we're going to put this in the middle. Okay, that's good. Oh, that looks better. Right, let's try again, shall we? That looks good. That looks almost good. There we go. Probably should have measured that. Okay, and then this piece that isn't scored at all, what we're going to do is we're going to put this piece right in the middle. But I'm going to line it up on my board here to make sure that I get the middle. Okay, so this is 10.5 is the middle, so that's going to be approximately there. See if it's the same that way. That looks pretty spot on. There we go. Okay, so that is what my hinge unit looks like when it's all glued up. Okay, take some of that glue off. There we go. You get the idea. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're going to glue it onto here. So once again, what I'm going to do is this will line up with this. Okay, it's the same width. So I'm going to put some glue. Actually, I'll put a little bit of tape on. This isn't going to attach on here. Okay, it's not going to attach at all. So if I put some glue on here up to that score line, and then take my hinge, line this edge up here like that, then do the same on this side up to that first score line. So that's the only place I'm putting the glue. Okay, and let's pop that down, line it up. We've got essentially what is a floating spine because it's not attached. It's not attached here at all. But I'm going to put that down and I'm going to leave it to one side to dry. And what we're going to do in the meantime is we're going to come back in a moment and we are going to make our 4 base pages and then have a look at the bits that go onto them. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so it's onto our base pages, and as I mentioned before, this book has 4 pages. They're all identical front and back, but we're just going to concentrate on making the page bases right now. So I want you to cut 4 at 5 1/8 by 7 7/8. Now, this is basically because our pages are just going to be slightly under the 6 by 8 inches. If you remember, on our hinges, we've got that extra ½ an inch. So 6 inches on the actual page would be, it would make it too wide, it would stick out. So we're going to cut the page, this is just slightly smaller than the finished page, and it's going to be 5 1/8 by 7 7/8. And it will all become clear very soon, but you need 4 of those. Now we're not going to score on them, so you can just put them directly to one side until we need them. So that's 4 at 5 1/8 by 7 7/8. Okay, then we're going to cut the other piece, which is slightly bigger, and we're going to cut 4 of these at 5 3/4 by 9. So 5 3/4 by 9 inches. Right. All right, I'm just going to measure this. I've not got Mark to put his special hack on here yet. This is a new trimmer, and I need Mark to put his hack on it, so I'm going to have to measure these for now. It's the only downside to this trimmer, because it is a most excellent piece of machinery. So as I said, we need 4 at 5 3/4 by 9. Let's see if I can cut 2 out at the same time. So 2 at 5 3/4 by 9. Okay, I'm just going to put my trimmer away now. Tidy up a little bit. Room to work. Let's grab my scoreboard, and we're going to score on those 4 pieces that we cut last, which were the bigger pieces. Okay, and we're going to score on the 5 3/4 inch side at ½ an inch, and then we're going to score on the 9 inch side at ½ an inch and at 8 1/2 inches. So what we've got here is ½ inch scores on 3 sides like that, and it's exactly the same on each piece. So you're going to score on the 5 3/4 inch side at ½ an inch, and the 9 inch side at ½ an inch and at 8 1/2 inches. Same on all 4. So you're scoring on the 5 3/4 inch side at ½ an inch, and you're scoring on the 9 inch side at ½ an inch and 8 1/2 inches. Okay, so you can pop your scoreboard away for a moment, grab yourself some scissors, and what we're going to do is we're going to miter this corner here. So I want you to take off that corner on all 4 pieces. I find it helps if you just slightly change the angle of your scissors. So if you snip up to where the score line intersects, and then just slightly change the angle of the scissors so it doesn't go directly right across, it stops any sort of bulges that you might get. Because sometimes when you fold and burnish these, you still get a little bit of a bulge, and it's not really something that you want in terms of pages, I find. Okay, so once we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold on all of these score lines like that on all 4 pieces. They're absolutely identical. So fold on those on your score lines. And then we're going to burnish. So we've got some really nice sharp creases. There. Okay, so once we've done this, what we're going to do is we're going to take those 4 pieces that we didn't score and we're going to slip them just inside these pieces there, and they should fit. They should fit perfectly. And if what we need to do is we need to line up these 2 edges here, okay, but they need to be flat against each other. If it bulges in any way, because this is a little bit too long to fit under the flaps, if it bulges in any way, then you do need to cut this piece down, the piece that hasn't got any scores in it, because we really need it to be flat and flush. Okay, so I'm popping all of those 4 in like that. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is open up these flaps, take my glue, pop it on the inside of each of these folded flaps that we've got here. Ooh. Make sure that these edges, the open edge that's got no flap, is flush with each other. And then fold these edges down. Just make sure that's glued down properly. There we go. Make sure that's flat and tight. There we go. Okay, and that's the same on all 4 pieces. So if you open up your flaps, glue on the inside of each flap like that. Whoops. Make sure that sticks down. Oh dear. There we go. And there we have our base pages. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to come back and work on the fronts, which once again are all identical. I'm sure I should probably be tidier with this glue than I am. Ugh. Told you I hated getting sticky fingers. Okay, right, so those are my 4 base pages. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just so you know, when I'm putting a book together, and I do make the pages just like this most of the time, I usually have opening on the left, but the flat part of the page tends to be the front to me, and then the bit with the flaps tends to be the back. That is purely personal choice, but that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the book. So those are my 4 base pages. I'm going to put those to one side to dry, and then we're going to come back and we're going to work on the fronts. So I'll see you in just a moment. Okay, so we've made our base pages. So what we're going to do now is make the fronts. And when I say the front, what I mean is we've got this flap here, and then we've got a small vertical pocket. We're going to come back and do the photo mats later, even though I've put the photo mat sizes in the cutting guide in the same place as the page fronts and page backs, etc. But what we'll do is we'll have a whole little section for photo mats, and we'll cut those all at the end. So that what we're going to be doing now is cutting this, and we're going to be cutting this and putting those on all 4. And as I said, they are actually all identical. They just look different because I've decorated them differently, but they are all absolutely identical. So if you grab some of your plain cardstock, I want you to cut, whoops, there's my pages. I want you to cut 4 at 4 5/8 by 8 inches. So I want you to cut 4 at 4 5/8. So that's 4.5 plus 1/8 of an inch. So 4 5/8 of an inch by 8. So 4 5/8 of an inch by 8, and those are the flaps, the bigger flaps at the front. And then what we're going to do is we are going to cut out the vertical pockets, and for those we're going to cut another 4, and we're going to cut those at 3 by 9 inches. So you're going to cut those at 3 by 9 inches, and we need 4. So that's 1, 2. Where's my cardstock? 3, 4. So that's 4 at 3 by 9 inches. Okay, so let's put those away. Make sure I've got room to work. Trimmer away, scoreboard out. So we're going to start on the flap, and these are all done in exactly the same way. So we've got our 4 pieces that were 4 5/8 by 8. And we're going to score on the 4 5/8 inch side. We're going to score at 1/2 inch, and we're going to score at 5/8 of an inch. So what we've got here is a flap that's got just a little tiny gusset here. There's just 1/8 of an inch in between those 2 score lines, and that's the same on all 4. So we're scoring at 1/2 inch, and we're scoring at 5/8 of an inch, and that's the same on all. So score at 1/2 inch and 5/8 of an inch on the 4.5 inch side. I'm going to do the same again, scoring at 1/2 inch and 5/8 of an inch. So I've just got that little gusset there. Now these are our vertical pockets. So we're going to score on the 3 inch side at 1/2 inch, and then we're going to score on the 9 inch side at 1/2 inch and at 8.5 inches, and that's the same on all. So we're scoring on the 3 inch side at 1/2 inch, and we're scoring on the 9 inch side at 1/2 inch and at 8.5 inches. Score on the 3 inch side at 1/2 inch and the 9 inch side at 1/2 inch and 8.5 inches. Okay. Right, when you've done that, We're going to put our scoreboards to one side. We're going to grab our scissors. And we're going to start, we're just going to be cutting on the these pockets, these vertical pockets. And once again, what we're going to do is we're going to cut this little square off here. So I'm going to cut and just slightly change the angle of my scissors so that I've got not a straight across line, but it's got a little bit of a kink in it. There we go. Same on all four. I mean, as books go, this just couldn't be simpler to put together. So if it's your first time, don't be scared. This is easy. You're learning some good techniques that will see you through. And you're going to have a book at the end of it. Okay, so these pieces, what we're going to do is we're going to fold on our score line. I think I'll just burnish that now. And then we're going to fold on the second score line as well and burnish. So what we've got here is a flap with a little gusset. And the reason that we've done that is because when we put this in our book, we've got just a little bit of space to put our pocket underneath without everything doing that croc gobby stuff. Alligator mouth. I don't know, Mark calls it croc gob. It just lets everything sit a little bit easier. Okay. So that's all four of the flaps made. And then the pockets, we're making these in exactly the same way as we made the pages. And we're just going to fold on those score lines. And then we're just going to burnish. Make sure we've got some nice sharp creases. And that is our pocket. Couldn't be easier. Let's do the same again. Okay, right, so here are my base pages, and I'm going to make these up in exactly the same way. So here I've got my opening, that opening, and that's going to be on the left-hand side because that's where it's going to attach to our book. So what I'm going to do is for each page, I'm going to take one of my vertical pockets. I'm going to glue like that. And I'm going to put this flush up to the left-hand edge. It will fit exactly top to bottom like that. Okay, with the pocket pointing out towards the right side, so the opening's on the right. And then I'm going to take one of these pieces. I'm going to put some glue on that flap there, like that. And I'm going to attach this to the far right-hand side of my page. It will fit exactly top to bottom. Okay, let's glue that on there. And then you can see that what I've got here is my front page that opens up like this. And then we've got that little pocket underneath. So if I show you on the one that's decorated. Oh, my poor butterfly. This is the flap. And that's the pocket. So you can see what that's like before it's decorated up. I will talk to you about decoration in part 7 of this book. But I will say that you probably need to go and watch that before you put your pages into the book. Because I would absolutely recommend that you decorate the pages before we pop them in. But just so you know, just so you're aware. Okay, so that's one page. In fact, actually, I think that's what I'll do. I'll add a last part to this where we put the pages in after decoration. Okay, so my opening is on the left. That's going to fit exactly top to bottom. It's flush with the left-hand edge. My opening here is pointing to the right. I'm going to pop some glue onto that flap there. Pop that on. That will fit exactly top to bottom, and it's flush to the right hand side. Okay, so there's that. Same again. Okay, there we go. That's another page, and then my final one. So that's the front. Let's pop that on there like that. Okay. Oh, far too much glue on that one. We'll just hide that. Okay, so those are my 4 front pages put together. We're going to come back in a moment and we're going to look at the backs of pages, which once again are done in the same way and are very, very similar. So I will see you back here in just a moment. Okay, so what we're going to do now is get on with the page backs. Okay, these are really simple as well. So we're going to cut 4 at 6 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So we're cutting 4 at 6 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And there are 4 of those. Okay. So 4 at 6 1/4 by 5.5. Okay, once we've done that, we need to cut. This is the flat bit that we're going to cut for the top now. I will say again, the photo mats, we're going to do those all in one go for the whole book, so we'll worry about those later. But now I want you to cut 4 at 5 1/4 by 5 5/8. So 5 5/8 is just 1/8 of an inch past the 5 1/2. And we're going to cut 4 at 5 1/4 by 5 5/8. Okay, let's do that again. So we're cutting 4 at 5 5/8 by 5 1/4. Okay. Put those to one side. Okay, scoreboard. And we're going to start with these ones that are 5 1/2 by 6 1/4. And we're going to score on the, let's start on the 6 1/4 inch side, and we're going to score at 1/2 inch, and we're going to score at 5 3/4 of an inch. Then we're going to score on the 5 1/2 inch side at 1/2 inch. So what we've got is this neat little pocket that's got 3 intersecting score lines. So like I said, we'll do this the same again. We're going to score on the 6 1/4 inch side. So that's 6 1/4 inches at the top. Score at 1/2 inch, 5 3/4 of an inch, and then at 1/2 inch on the 5 1/2 inch side, all identical. So 6 1/4 inch side, 1/2 inch, 5 3/4, 5 1/2 inch side, 1/2 inch. Last one. Okay, and the flaps which go above them, these are really easy too. So we're going to score on the 5 5/8 of an inch side. The 5 1/4, that is the width, okay? And we're going to score at 1/2 inch, and we're going to score at 5/8 of an inch. So we've just got that little gusset again, just like we had on the front. So we're scoring on the 5 5/8 of an inch side. So that's 5 5/8 of an inch on that side, 5 1/4 on this side, and we're scoring at 1/2 inch and 5/8 of an inch, and that is the same on all 4. So we're going to score on the 5 5/8 inch side at 1/2 inch and at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, right. So these pieces, the ones that we scored first, that have got the 3 intersecting score lines, this will amaze you, this bit, because what we're going to do is cut these corners off again. So I'm going to snip up, just slightly change the angle of my scissors, because we don't want no bulges. I'm just cutting that off. Whoops. Thankfully, nobody's going to see that bit. Like that. Okay, so let's get rid of those. And I'm going to fold on those score lines. Exactly the same as we've done with the previous ones. Okay, and let's burnish. go. Last one. Okay, and then with these flaps, let's fold on that score line, let's burnish, and let's fold and burnish on the next one as well. So what we've got is that little gusset like that. Here we go. There we go. Having 4 pages the same does make this very quick to go together as albums work, which means that we can be focusing on the decorating, which, let's be honest, these papers are just gorgeous, and that's where we want to be. So here are my front pages. Now I'm going to turn them over, and now I'm going to focus on the back. So I've got my opening to the right. I'm going to grab one of these. This is where I find out that I've made it the wrong size. Miraculously not. I'm going to put some glue onto that flap like that. And I'm going to put the pocket at the bottom. And that's going to fit exactly side to side. Let's open that up a little bit. Okay, so that's my pocket. This is the back of the page. And then this flap here, this, a little bit of glue up the top here, like that. And this is going to fit up the top like that. And then there we've got that. Okay, so if I just have a look at my book, here I've got my flap. We're going to come back to this in a bit, this insert, but I've got my pocket here and then my flap that goes over the top. Okay, and they're all exactly the same. So if I turn that over, I've got my pocket, let's pop that down the bottom, and that is going to fit right at the bottom. It's going to be flush side to side. Make sure that fits nicely. Then the flap goes at the top. You can, of course, if you want to, with all of these flaps that we've got, if you want to round the corners, you go ahead and do that. I chose not to. But if you are a corner rounder, then you go ahead and round them. This is your book. You can do what you like to it. Okay. There we go. So there's my front. Turn it over. Pop that on the back. Goes on the top. And then the final one, let's turn that over. Pocket. pop that on there. There we go. So those are all of my base pages put together. What we're going to do now is we're going to come back and we're going to have a look at the photo mats and inserts, and then we'll talk about decoration. Okay, so I'll see you in a minute. Okay, a nice easy bit now. We're going to cut out all of our photo mats and inserts. Now, we've got the super easy photo mats. These go on the page fronts, okay? So I'm going to cut 4 at 7 3/4. That's the height actually. 7 3/4. I'm just saying that first so that I can cut it easy, by 4 3/4. And I want 4 of those. So 4 at 4 3/4 by 7 3/4. Okay, no score marks on those, so those are ready to go. 4 3/4 by 7 3/4. Okay, they are for the page fronts. Now, the ones that go on the page backs are slightly different. There's a bit more to them. They've got kind of a fold on them. So we'll cut those out now. We're going to cut 4 at 7 1/2 by 5. So 4 at 7 1/2 by 5. They've also got no score marks on them, so we can put those to one side. So 4 at 7 1/2 by 5. And then finally, we've got 4 at 5 by 7. So 4 at 5 by 7. And we will be scoring on these, so keep those in a different pile. So 4 at 5 by 7. Okay, let's get rid of those. Right, so time for your scoreboard. And all we're going to do is these last ones that we cut, the 5 by 7, we're going to score on the 7-inch side at 1/2 inch. And they're all exactly the same. So you're scoring on the 7-inch side at 1/2 inch. Okay. So fold on that score line, burnish. So you've got a nice sharp crease at the top there. Okay, now these longer pieces that we cut, these were, let me see, 5 by 7 1/2. What we're going to do is, this is the back of the photo mat. We're going to just glue that front flap onto there like that. And you can see that there is a difference in length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some glue on the inside of that flap there that we've just made. A little bit of glue. And I'm going to pop that on there like that, so it's inside the flap. Let's line it up, make sure it fits exactly. There we go, and glue that down. So that is the photo mat. It really couldn't be simpler. Okay, just make sure there's not too much glue on there. Same again. Glue on that photo mat. pop that inside there. Line it up. There we go. Final one. There we go. Okay, so if I just grab my base pages, here's my front, and that's going to have the single photo mat in there. I'm going to turn it over, and inside there goes one of the photo mats. The long piece fits inside like that. Let's just make sure that goes in all right. There we go, and that fits in there. So you can see that you've got that difference there, because what I did with mine was I used that as quite a decorative element. And now we've actually put all of these pages together, what we're going to do next is we're going to come back and we're going to talk in some detail about decoration, and I'm going to talk about the absolutely gorgeous Spectrum Gardenia collection that I have used to put this together. I'm going to show you exactly what I used. Might have gone a bit mad, but you know, what can you do? And I'm going to talk to you as well about how I use my sewing machine. So that goes in there. And that goes in there. So those are all of my pages and all of my photo mats. And I'm going to come back, talk to you about decoration, and then you can go off and decorate yours. See you in a minute. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I have used to decorate this up, I have used the Spectrum Gardenia by 49 and Market. And I'm not going to lie, I had some little bits left over from a previous project, which you can see where I used Spectrum Sherbet. Bit of a fan, as you can tell, but those bits weren't too much, and I'll kind of show you where they were. Now, the papers that I used the 6x8 pads. I used one of the classic collection, and I used one of the foundations. Now, I can't show you the fronts of those packets because I actually used what was on the back of them, but just as an example, some of the other bits that I used was the cluster kit, although I must admit I didn't use too much of that. I've got other plans for that. I used the chipboard set. I used the butterfly laser cut elements. Just so you know, one of the nice things about this is that you get some extra bits to fussy cut on the back if you want to. I used the leaves laser cut elements. And I use the ephemera bits as well, which are just utterly gorgeous. Okay, so that just gives you a bit of an example of what I used. I might have gone a bit mad. I have got masses of stuff left. Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And I also used the tag set. And if I just show you what I've got, I haven't got much left in the way of paper. I've got little bits. But this isn't everything, but I've still got all of this lot left. And this is all bits of ephemera. So like I said, I might have gone a little bit mad, but I've still got plenty to use. So there's bits of my Spectrum Sherbet in there as well. There was one of the clusters that I was talking to you about. But I've used all sorts of bits, and I've just got so much left for so many other projects, so that's really exciting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk you through how I decorated each page, because I know the charm of this book is actually the way that it's been decorated. And then I'm going to finish off by talking to you about how I sew on my pages, because I think that has maybe what's made this a little bit more out of the ordinary. So the book itself, I covered front and back in just a 6x8 sheet of paper. And then here on the front, what I also did was I took from the foundations paper, there's a paper that's got circles on it. And I took one of the circles, I cut round it, and then I sewed on it. Then we've got this kind of starburst style paper, which I think I might still have some of. So let me just show you. See, I've got bits everywhere because there's just so much of this left. There's some of my laser cut elements. Let me just see. Yeah, there was this one that I've got left. This is the starbursty paper, which I love actually. I'm amazed that I didn't use more of that. And what I did was I cut out various bits and then I went over them with my sewing machine. And then I added these up on bits of my chipboard that I got left over, just my grey board that I used to make my cover. And then I used some of these elements. These are out of the ephemera pack, I think. And I've just layered them up on bits of chipboard. I've used some of these cardstock words. I've used some of the flowers. I think the flowers might have been some of my Spectrum sherbet bits left over. And I used some of the butterflies here as well. But everything is kind of layered up. And it's just luscious. And like I said, I will talk to you about the way that I do my sewing in a bit. So when I've opened up my book, what I've done here on this side is the front and back covers. I've left this blank so that you can see is I've just put some plain pattern paper down. Okay, I haven't done anything fancy on that. But at the front here, what I did, this is actually out of the, I think this is out of the cluster pack. I took one of the cardboard images from there, and then I sewed around the edge, and this is a piece of acetate in here. I don't know if you can see that. And then I sewed here and here, added a bit of one of the chipboard sentiments here, and then I glued this on 3 sides here onto this backing that I'd got. Then these were 2 pieces out of the ephemera pack, and all I did with those was I sewed around the edges and I did some of these lovely tabs. You know, you can put photos on the back there and those just slip nicely in there. So that's kind of what I did with my front cover. Now the pages themselves, what I thought I would do is to have a different colour per page. That didn't really work out quite as I intended, for the very simple reason that the papers are so bright and colourful. It's kind of difficult to stick to one colour without it looking I just couldn't stick to one colour because there was just too many nice colours, basically. That was the problem. So you'll see where I might have started off on this page, I was thinking, you know, pinks and purples and blues, and then I might have ended up somewhere a little bit different. But what I did was I actually decorated each of the pages with flat paper first of all. So what I did was I took my pattern paper and I decorated up this bit, and this bit. I decorated this before I glued it down onto the flap, because what I did was I sewed all the way around with my sewing machine, and then I took some of the laser cut butterflies, I laid them down, a little spot of glue, and then I took my sewing machine and I just did a straight line on the body of each of the butterflies, and then left these little tails, because obviously it was much tidier to sew on the pattern paper before I added it onto my base page. Then I took some of these chipboard pieces and I just lined up the colours and I put those on there. Okay, so that was really how I put that together kind of easily. Now with regard to these very simple photo mats that go in the front, all I did was just stick some of the pattern paper on the back, and then with this pattern paper, just to make it a little bit more interesting, I just simply cut I cut the whole piece to size, and then I cut a little chunk out of the middle here, and then sewed around that, and then put it onto the photo mat. I've used some of the leaves here, which I've sewed around. I've sewed a line down this cardboard piece here, and then that's a bit of chipboard. So that is how I decorated that. And they're actually, all four of these are identical in design. They're just using different papers. So that's pots in there. Let's pop that in. And then this is, I think, out of the ephemera pack. It's just one of the postcards that you get. So I've just popped that in there as well. So that's how I've put the fronts together. And that is the same on all of them. The page backs are a little bit different in that I've decorated up with one colour all the way through. And then the front piece, I glued that on afterwards, because what I did was I took that circle again and I cut it out. I cut out, I think, 2 of the big circles, and then I cut them in half. And then I sewed with my machine on there. At that point, I'd already got my sewing around the edge of this piece here, this pattern paper. But what I did then was I laid this down, and I just put a little spot of glue under this semicircle here at the bottom, and then I sewed around that, and then I sewed in this bit here. I think that was out of my Spectrum sherbet, and I added some flowers, which might also have been Spectrum sherbet. And then this now, basically, because of the way that I stuck it and I didn't stick down in here, I've now got this little bit of a pocket here. So if I wanted to, what I could do, imagine sewing around that, and then I've got a little pocket there that I can add some more to. And then I just took a bulb pin and I just added some of the cardstock ephemera bits together and popped that there. Now, the inserts, I did exactly the same on these. You'll see that the back and these 2 pieces don't have any sewing. I didn't want to make it too bulky. But on the front, before I glued that piece of pattern paper down, what I did was I sewed around the outside. I used some of these laser cut pieces out of the laser cut. They're just amazing. I think this was Spectrum sherbet again, but I know that there is an equivalent in the Gardenia, and I just sewed across there with some of these lace elements, and then these bits as well. I think those might have been sherbet, but I took like my sewing machine, and then I sewed some of the veins onto the leaves. I put some flowers there, and then I've just carried on running that line across there, and I've sewed these on as well. So you can see that there's quite a lot of sewing. Now, if you don't want to sew, but you really like the effect that you give, remember that you can draw it on with a pen. My friend Julie Billingham does that quite often, and it always looks amazing. So if you're not a sewer, you know, you can always draw on with a decent black pen, if that's more your thing. So that's how I decorated up the insert. So as you can see here, what we've got is this green blue page. Let's just put that in properly. I think it's just sticking on a bit underneath there. There we go. But what you can see, even though we haven't put our pages in yet, when I did put my pages in, I actually just took some pieces of pattern paper, cut them down quite narrow. So you've got a 1/2 inch gap here and here. I'd cut these at 3 1/8 inches across, and I glued them on so that you get that colour going all the way across. Now, this I did in exactly the same way. We've already talked about the fact that we've got the papers going across here. These are not sewn. The insert, like I said, exactly the same way, just different colourway with it. That goes in there like that. But what I did on this one was, before I glued it down, I took my sewing machine, sewed around the edge, and then I added on some of the leaves, and then sewed along there as well, and then used some of the chipboard pieces to line up colours there. And I made sure that I was going over the edge as well, because that kind of just made it a little bit different for me. On this one, this is my pink page, and you can see that I've done exactly the same here. We've got this, where is it? We've got this little extra, you know, semicircular pocket you know, that you can always make a photo mat to go into. And then the same here again with this insert. I've used pink flowers and, you know, pink lace and pink butterflies, but they are actually all identical in terms of design. Now this page I did a little bit differently. I actually focused a motif here, and I used a lot of the pink images from the ephemera pack. So we've got like this film reel here, we've got this great big gorgeous frame which I then sewed around here, and you can see that I've used some zigzag as well as straight stitch. I've used some of these gorgeous hearts, and then I've used one of the pink butterflies there, and then some of the ephemera and chipboard shape there as well. And then inside here, what you've got, these are from the ephemera pack. You've got the photo mat there, that's a purple one. And that just goes there into play. And, you know, remember that you can always put like photos on here as well. So even though I've not put any photos in this book, there is a lot of room for photos if that's what you choose to do. So on the back of this, I kept red as my main sort of focus colour. We've got that space there again for a photo mat if you want to. And then here we've used exactly this. I've used the same design throughout. I've just changed the colours because that seemed to be an easy but a cohesive way of putting it all together. And then on this page, what I've done is I've actually taken a lot of the tags. I like those because they've got the twine on, and then sewed around the edges, put my tags on, and then some tickets and some butterflies just to add a bit of interest. And then I took some of the chipboard circles and then that orange bit just to add something to this side of the flap. And once again, it's exactly the same process inside. On the back here, once again, you can see that semicircle. We've got some room there. I love this paper. Done exactly the same there again, but I did leave this blank. You don't have to leave yours blank, but I did leave mine blank because there's so much going on all the way through. I just kind of didn't want to spoil it or do anything there. So that is how I put my book together, and I hope that's given you a bit of a background. Now, with regard to sewing, I'm going to show you just a little bit about how I sew, because I don't often sew on my books. It's something that I really like to do, but it's not something that I do that often because I'm just really aware that not everybody likes to sew. So, you know, I don't want to push my luck because I know how amazing it makes books look, and I don't want to put people off. So generally speaking, I don't tend to sew, but I do absolutely adore the effect that it gives you. So I'm just going to grab my sewing machine here. And I use a Brother sewing machine and some really good black cotton. My favourite is the Gutterman, but you can use whatever. So if you just thread it up perfectly normally, and then I tend to actually keep my foot pedal on my desk, which I know is a little bit odd, but that's what I do. So if I just switch that on now, you can see here that I've got my wheel where I can choose what stitches I like to use. Now, I like to keep it about 9 for the stitch straight length, and then the middle of the 5 for the zigzag. Okay, and that's just personal taste. But every time I start to sew, I don't know if you can see here, I've got my 2 threads, and I like to leave quite a long thread. So for instance, if I just take this piece here that I had, I'm going to just sew around that, and I think Mark's asleep, so I'm probably going to wake him up now. So I know you can't really see what's going on here, but I've just lined that up a little bit. I've got my pedal, which I tend to keep on my desk because I just think it gives me more control. I know you can't see this very well, but I'm just going to show you that I'm just sewing now around, and I'm getting to the edge of my card. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just lift up the foot and turn my card and pop my foot back down, and then sew a little bit more. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the stitch that I'm using. So I'm just going to quickly shift that to 5 to the middle, and then I'm going to just use my foot pedal, and I'm just going to persuade my sewing machine that it wants to do a zigzag. Now, this time I'm actually going to leave my needle out. It's okay to leave your needle in, I found, when you are switching from a straight stitch to a zigzag, but on the way back, don't do that because it gets all sorts of confused. So I'm going to switch back to the number 9 here on the top of my dial, and I'm going to pop in my needle. There we go. Now I'm not a lover of doing this terribly tidily. I think I don't think there's any need for that really. So if I just go all the way round, I'm just going to change it back to 5 there. Let's make sure that's in the right place. Let's do a little bit more zigzaggy. Lift that up. Go back to my number 9. You know your machine. You know what stitches you like and what kind of size they are. And then I'm just going to use my machine and I'm just going to go back to the beginning piece. So if I lift that out now, I'm going to just grab my scissors and I'm just going to cut myself a long tail. So if I just switch my machine off, there we go. I'll just show you what I've done here. So I don't know if you can see there, I've got my cardstock and I've mixed in between a zigzag and the straight stitch, and then here I have got my long threads. So I'm going to cut them off a little bit because we don't want them too long, but that for me, that's the pretty bit. That's the bit that I like. What I would do now, which is what I've done in this book and what I do quite often, is I'd go round again. It just gives you a little bit more definition, but you've got all of these nice hangy threads and it just works really well, I think. And the Brother machine that I've got is one of the few where I haven't had to fight with tension, because tension causes me no end of problem. I am not somebody who sews on fabric. I am not somebody who knows what they're doing. I just know what my sewing machine likes in terms of sewing on paper. So tension and stuff and the way that it works, I haven't got a clue, but the Brother that I use does tend to kind of adapt itself quite well, and it wasn't an expensive one. So there we go. That's just a little bit about how I've decorated it up with terms of my sewing. I've gone through the book with you, so all that's left to do now is for you to go off and decorate. And once you've done that, what we will do is we will come back and we will put our pages in the book and just make the finishing touches. I'm not going to decorate mine up. I've already done that once. I just want to show you how to finish off the book. So I will see you guys in just a moment. So we've done all of our decoration. Our pages are ready to go in. We're just going to finish it off. Now, I would say that it's an idea to base decorate your cover just with the flat kind of paper before you put your pages in, but I wouldn't necessarily decorate the actual front bit until after I've put my pages in, just because it helps to be a little bit flatter. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm looking here at my hinges, and I've got my 4 hinges ready, but here halfway down you can see that we've got this score line. That's the guideline for where we're going to put our pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm just going to miter each piece, each hinge up to where that score line is on the bottom and the top, and I'm just going to do that on all of them. So just scoring from the snipping from the edge up to where that score line is. Okay, so you can see that it's all nicely mitered. Now I haven't folded this yet, but I'm going to do that now. So if I just fold there and then fold there, you'll see now that what I've got is my spine, and I'm just going to fold it round so that it kind of just angles a little bit. Okay, let's put that down. Let's make sure that it all curves properly like that. And then I'm going to start from the back and I'm going to work my way forwards. So here is my page. I've got this opening here, and that is going to slip onto that hinge there like that. Up to that score line. Make sure that it's lined up top to bottom with our book. So I'm going to grab my glue. I'm going to put some glue on that part of my hinge, front and back. And take my page, slip it onto that hinge like that, line it up with the top and bottom of my book, put a bit too much glue on there. Probably best you don't put that much on. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same with the next one. So glue up to that score line. Open that up. Pop that onto the next hinge. Up to that score line. Line it up. Make sure it fits top to bottom. Glue that down. Same again. And then the final one. Okay, so that's opened up like that. Line that up. There we go. And those are the pages all in my book. Okay, so let's just fold that. You can see how this floats here, this bit. That will just click in if you just kind of keep teasing it round so that this bit of your spine is going to become rounded. You can see there that's kind of starting to click in. So just press it with your fingers until it sits right. There we go. Just tease it in, and there we go. It's all settled in nicely there. Okay, there we go. So that is your book put together. We haven't got the croc gob anymore, thankfully, but you can see how that goes together. I think it's quite a decent sized book. I don't know how many photos you could put in, but a fair few, I would imagine. So you can just get on now, finish decorating, and your book is all together and ready to go. I hope you've enjoyed making it with me. I'd love to see your versions. You can join my Paper Scissors Story Facebook group, where we have free classes every Wednesday night making mini books, and where we also put pictures of the mini books that we've made or we're making. We do all sorts of things in there. We have a monthly mini of the month. for a draw to win prizes, and we just share tips and tricks that we've learned along the way. So do come and join us there. Take a look at my website as well at calsummers.co.uk. But just bear in mind as well that 49er Market have got a really thriving group that you can join and maybe post in there if you're using 49er Market papers. That would be awesome to see. And if you've got any problems at all, just drop me a line. I'm always happy to help. So I will look forward to seeing what you're going to make, and I'll see you all back here with the class really soon. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Bye.